Welcome to another witness on how we have more than enough. This is Pastor Terry from St. John's Episcopal Church. Howard and Denise Thain share with us when they were children living outside London during World War II. You will hear them say they didn't know they were lacking luxuries because everyone made do, and it was how things were. They had family, and it was more than enough.
We did not have all the comforts. At that point in time, we didn't know what we were missing because we had, when the war started, I was only 3 and Howard was 6.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably missed more of the creature comforts than I did.
Probably, yeah.
Because case in point, I didn't know what chocolate was until 1946 because we
didn't have candy or
we
sweets.
didn't have candy or sweets. There was nothing like that
There was rationing
during
on
the
too.
war because there were shortages of food.
Mm-hmm.
But so we didn't have, as it were, creature comforts, but we didn't go without.
No.
I mean, there was, yes, food was rationed, but we grew a lot of, everything was homegrown.
They had what they called allotments.
We grew our own vegetables.
Yeah.
We had fruit trees. I know my mother, she always kept sugar to one side so she could make jam because we had a plum tree. We had gooseberries and we had red currants, so she would preserve stuff. I mean, obviously we were going without, but we didn't know what we were going without. And
My
and there
father
was a
had an
sense
allotment
of-
where he would grow cabbage and potatoes and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
there was always a sense of community because we were all in this together.
Denise's father was gone during the war. My father was gone for 5 years, so
But you didn't know what you were missing because
no, we never had anything.
we didn't have it. But I think the nice thing, not the nice thing, but we were all in the same boat. And there was more of a sense of community. We were there for each other. Neighbors were neighbors. We were not feeling left out of anything. Families were close because that's all we had.
All during this time, those first 5 years of the war, we had air raids every night. We'd go to school, air raid siren would go, they'd have a classroom in an air raid shelter. They wouldn't let us home until the all clear had gone. And this is going through bombing and what we used to call the doodle bug, the buzz bombs, pilotless bombs. They just go in the air and the engine stops, then you don't know where it's going to land. And up the road, probably less than a mile from where Denise lived and I lived, the V2 rocket landed and blew out an old shopping complex. You could put a double-decker bus inside the crater it made.
But I think another thing too, that there were family units. Even though our families were scattered, as it were. I mean, your family, you had a lot of family in Wales. I had family in East England. My parents lived in the London area. So although we didn't have close family around us, we were a community, as it were, which was like, even in wartime, you're still a family unit. You stay together, you stick together. You knew how to be a family.
No electronics. Our entertainment was the radio. Used to have some good comedy
Right.
radios. We'd sit in front of the fire and then go and listen to the radio show. There used to be some real funny shows on.
And then we would do things together as a family.
No central heat, just coal fires when we could
Right.
get coal.
As a family, we would be reading.
Right.
We would be talking. We would be laughing, listening to the radio. And here again, our church was very much a part of our community. We all went to church, we went to Sunday school. And I think for me particularly, you know, I was an only child. My father was gone quite a bit of the time, so it was my mother and I. And I think my mother was encouraging me to get involved, like in Sunday school and making friends, knowing other people. And that's how we grew up in the church, really.
That's how we met through the church.
And, you know, the love for our families and for each other grew from that sense of community, sense of belonging, and being involved. And
as we got a little older at the church, they had a fantastic youth club. We had a parish hall with a stage and a table tennis table and all that, and probably 50 to 75 kids all the time. This is when we got together. We'd have dances every couple of weeks, and, you know.
But see, this is the thing too now. As the church has changed, as the world has changed, church isn't so important in people's lives anymore. You know, that was the focus. And it's, well, now of course we have social media, we have all these other distractions, and maybe for good or for bad.
Right. You know, we were talking earlier about every generation has this thing, right? You guys had that community, but early on you also had bombing.
Yeah.
So thank God our youth don't have that.
Right.
But they don't necessarily have the same kind of community, right?
I'll tell you one thing I don't like. Black Lives Matter. To me, all lives matter. I don't care what anybody says.
Right. Unfortunately, in this country, though, black people are treated differently.
Yeah.
It's true.
I mean.
Right. So
I think
tell me about when your dads were gone. I'm assuming fighting in the war. Were you able to correspond by writing, or did you just not know what was going on when
We
your
used to
dads?
write. You heard from my father.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that your father.
My father wasn't gone the whole time. He was a civilian attached to the Air Force because he was a wireless operator. So he was going up into northern Scotland, into the Hebrides to do air-sea rescue radio.
When planes are in trouble coming over, he would talk to the
back
radio.
From
coming
Europe
back from
after
raid,
bombing raids,
Norway
if
or
they
whatever.
were in trouble, he would essentially communicate with them
How to get back.
via wireless to bring them in. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, he's had, I guess he saved quite a few lives apparently. But we would,
He was a
so
civil
he was
civilian.
gone for chunks of time, not all the time.
Right.
So we would communicate by letter. Yes.
Yeah.
There was no telephone, no television, but we would write.
But it took a long time for everything to come through from
That was
singers.
it.
He was in North Africa, then Sicily, then Italy. He ended up at the end of the war in Graz, Austria. I can remember one time when he was in North Africa, we had a parcel, it was all wrapped in cloth, and then it was dates and a few nuts and everything else.
Yeah, my father used to send packages, eggs, because we didn't get fresh eggs, as it were.
Get fresh eggs, and we went down to Tumble. My grandmother kept chickens.
We had a lot, but we didn't realize what we had because we
were a lot better than other people.
Yeah, we were in many ways. There were children from London area who were evacuated to other parts of the country.
Away from the bombing.
You know, we stayed where we were. We weren't evacuated.
We had an air raid shelter in our garden. I'd say 8x8 cement with galvanized steel over the top and dirt on top of that and a couple of bunks inside.
And we had one too, and it had a paraffin stove in there to keep you warm. It's hard to talk about sometimes, but yet I realize we were very, very fortunate. We had a lot to be thankful for. We really did.
We're here because
I can't be bitter. There's no way.
Adjusting to life after the war was difficult. Eventually, Howard and Denise's families decided to immigrate to the United States.